So if this is the first time you ever heard the word autoimmune disease, let me just be the first to tell you it sucks. Now, through my own experience, including the diagnosis of Crohn's disease, I struggle with many things, most of which had to revolve around me allowing the disease to literally control my life. So if you're somebody who's been diagnosed, you're going through that process, or you have a family member, this is the video for you. When I analyze how I was able to actually overcome and use this as my superpower instead of my kryptonite, I found that there was 3 powerful things that I did to take back control. Now, I just want to say this. If you stumbled upon this video and you are diagnosed with an autoimmune, I want to let you know that I see you. Now, even though you'll hear me kind of talk about my own personal diagnosis and my Crohn's disease, I couldn't possibly know what you're currently going through right now, especially since Crohn's disease and autoimmunes just in general are so personalized depending on everybody's specific situation. But I can tell you that no matter what you're going through, that you've got this. You are stronger than this BS, and you're not alone. Let's get through this together. If you're ready to take back control from your autoimmune, this is the video for you. Are you ready? Let's go. So welcome to Modern Leadership, where we see things differently. We help busy parents become modern leaders so they can excel in their personal and professional lives without burning themselves out. How we do that is on short videos Mondays and Thursdays and longer workshops during the weekends to help personalize these strategies for your specific leadership role. If you're new, consider subscribing, but let's jump right into today's topic. So a little over 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune called Crohn's disease. Now, I've been a police officer for about 20 years, and I have been having stomach issues for a very long period of time. Now, for some people out there who really don't understand what an autoimmune is, or maybe you're the kind of person where you have it, but you have a hard time actually explaining that to people, I want to break down what an autoimmune disease is really quickly. So an autoimmune disease is where your immune system attacks healthy cells in your body by mistake. It basically uses your immune system against you. Now, there's several different kinds of autoimmune diseases. Mine specifically is Crohn's disease. Every single specific kind attacks a different part of your body. So for me personally, mine attacks my digestive tract, all the way from the beginning, which is my mouth, to the end, which I'll leave to your imagination. So everybody who has Crohn's disease gets affected by this a little bit differently. So I'll share how I was so affected, but just know that based off of your specific situation, you could be affected in an entirely different way. Now, I should have said this in the beginning, but I want to let you know that I am not a doctor. But I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Seriously though, you should always consult with a doctor before you take anybody's advice, especially somebody that you find on Google, you find on YouTube, because it's a very low barrier for entry. I'm just gonna be honest here. I really want what's best for you. Now that being said, for me personally, I started to experience symptoms ever since I became a police officer, which was about 20 years ago. When I would go on very specific calls that were really high stress situations, I would always feel some issues with my stomach that would cause me to go to the doctor. And when I did go to the doctor, they would either tell me I had a virus, I had irritable bowel syndrome, or a number of other things, and I just needed to give it more time to feel better. Little did I know that this was my body's way of saying that there's something going on in here. Fast forward about 14 years of my police career, which was about 6 years ago, I started to experience this a lot more severely. Now I'm going to save you all the details, but let's just say that for about 6 months, I was in the middle of an active flare, which means my digestive system was being targeted, and as a result, I was getting ulcerations up and down my digestive tract. Most of what I was eating was unable to be absorbed, and I couldn't create any energy that way. Now what's crazy is if you go through this process of being diagnosed, sometimes it can feel like it takes forever. For me personally, it took 6 months before they actually found out what was going on. And once again, they were pointing in a million different directions till I finally pushed the envelope, had them run the tests, which ultimately led to my diagnosis. And I wish I could say that my diagnosis is when everything turned around, but it did not. People saw that I had lost a lot of weight. People saw that I didn't have color in my face anymore, and they were constantly asking me questions about whether I was okay or not. I even had somebody run into me in the supermarket and they asked if I had been diagnosed with cancer. After struggling with this for literally a year and a half, ultimately I got some help. I got on some good medication. I made some tweaks and adjustments along the way, and I learned these 3 valuable things that you absolutely need to know if you want to overcome your autoimmune disease. And that's what I want to share with you guys here today. Now, I'm also going to give you a bonus tip that combines all 3 of these things to make sure that you're going to continue to show up in all of these 3 areas, because every single one is important and vital. So step number 1 to take back control of your autoimmune is to focus on mindset first. Honestly, when I first got diagnosed, I tried to run the opposite direction. I tried to pretend like it didn't exist. Then I tried to push through it and tried to outwork it. Thinking about that now doesn't even make any sense, but that's all that my brain knew what to do at that point. What really helped me was to slow down and realize that this is a part of the process. I started to listen to my body, to give it time to recover, and stopped fighting it. Now, this is something that I got a lot of help from a therapist with, because it was very hard to do it on my own. But ultimately, you have to give yourself time. And sometimes you've just got to sit in that suck for a little while till it's time to turn it around. around. Once you get to that point where you're like, it's time to turn it around, guess what? It's time to take ownership. This is actually something that I hit up in detail in my book, Mastering Your Life Through Self-Coaching. Because anytime you want to take back control of your life, the first part of the equation is taking ownership of the things you can control. So my mindset went from, why did this happen to me, to this happened, now what am I going to do about it? What is something that I can control? I cannot control whether or not I have the disease, but I can control my response to it. Then I started to think about all the reasons why I must succeed, because there's people out there who are also struggling, and I need to be proof that it's possible for them too. I also realized that I was starting to manifest a disconnected life from my family. I started to think I couldn't do things with them. I couldn't function at their capacity, so I would talk myself out of really connecting with them when I had an opportunity. When I made this switch, I started to think about the opportunities that I would have. I started to think about ways that I could connect with them. So once again, I could be proof that it's possible for others too. Now, as we move on to the other two areas, I want you to remember that it always starts with mindset first. It takes some time to actually process this pain, and it's incredibly important if you get a coach or a therapist to help you do that, but don't try to rush it. Now, before we move on to step number 2, if you're enjoying this video, hit the like button and subscribe to future videos of this topic. Now, step number 2 is do your research. Don't take people's word on it. If you haven't heard my story, I was literally spinning around in circles for a long time. I can't tell you how powerful you feel when you understand what is actually happening to your body, especially before you're having conversations with your doctor. Now, I want to share some of the things that I found in my own personal research, not because I think this is something that you should do, but I always like to share my story just to show you maybe some things that you haven't been thinking about yet. For me personally, it started with food. There were certain foods that I could eat that would actually cause me more symptoms and cause my flare to be extended. And there were certain foods that would reduce the inflammation, would make me feel better and help me recover quicker. That's when I found a nutritionist who specialized in autoimmune who really helped me. Now, the second thing I did my research into was medication. I didn't just want to take everybody's word for it. I actually wanted to find out what it was actually doing to my body. What I realized is when you have an autoimmune, a lot of what medication does is to get your immune system to be suppressed or shut down, which is not the greatest thing on the planet, but it does prevent you from going through flares. Now, I didn't just take people's word for it. I actually wanted to do the research so I understood how it was working in my body. And when I understood it, I can have deeper conversations with my doctor to find out if it's the right medicine for me or not. Now, the third thing I had to research was stress relief. Anything from meditation to sleeping to box breathing, I had to find ways to get my stress under control. Not just when things were going well, but also when I was still being put in different situations as a police officer that would make my stress go through the roof. So I found different techniques that really helped me to bring myself back down and reduce the adrenaline that was pumping through my body. Once I started to do this research, that led me to step number 3, which was to find a community that got me. The thing is when I was going through this process of getting diagnosed, the first thing I started to do was isolate. And that was the worst thing that I could do. It was so much easier to go down the spiraling of thoughts in my brain when I was the only person that I thought was experiencing this situation right then. Things changed for me when I started to connect with people who understood what I was going through. Some of them had been people that had gone through it themselves, and some of them had just been people who've known other people who've gone through it. So when you can connect with people who have an idea of what you're going through and they're willing to see things differently, that is the true game changer. The energy of the people you surround yourself with is contagious. So if you find the people that you're currently spending time with don't have the kind of energy that you want, it's time to find a group of people who do. Now, one caveat to this is the people that you are surrounding yourself with, I found it's never been a good idea to actually leave them in the dark. So many times simply explaining the disease that you have and how they can help you is all they need. And yes, it can get a little bit uncomfortable sometimes explaining this, but you can't expect other people to help you if they don't even know what's going on. Now, I want to bring this bonus tip in because we talked about having the right mindset. We talked about the tactics and we talked about the community. And this is a process called evolution. As you go, you're going to keep revisiting these 3 things and continuing to level up. And most importantly, show the world that this disease does not define you. You're willing to find the right mindset, to find the right tactics, and to find the right community. I believe you were put on this planet for a reason, and I believe it was to be proof of what's possible for others. It's time for you to go out and show them. Now, Babe Ruth has this great quote, "It's hard to beat a person who never gives up." I'm so proud of you for being that leader. Never give up. Now, if you get to this point and you're wondering what are some of the personal things I did to stay motivated through all of this, check out this playlist of motivational videos that I put together for you that help me keep fighting the fight. And of course, subscribe to the channel. I promise to do my part by leading you and keeping you inspired. Thank you for being here and keep leading from the front.